Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us here. I think we'll go ahead and get ready if Beth and Kathy are ready to start us off. Thank you for joining us at the summit this afternoon. The topic of this session is hitting the trails, supporting family literacy and wellness through learning trails. And we'll have two presenters this afternoon, Beth Dotson-Brown, who's the project director for Berea's full service community schools, and Kathy Holt, who is the senior specialist for collective impact with Save the Children. And Beth, I will turn it over to you now.
These trails that we're going to share with you. So I work as a project director with Partners for Education at Berea College. The grants that I have worked on where we have been a part of using story trails and putting up story trails have all been in rural communities. And our primary work has been with the schools, but we always want to work with other partners in the community as well to try to make progress toward our results. One of the common results across many Partners for Education grants is that children enter kindergarten ready to learn. So we know that the story trail or the story walk or the storybook walk, whatever we want to call it, can contribute to that result. We're also concerned about third grade reading levels and being on target at third grade. So again, this is a literacy activity that can encourage that. We also have been looking at wellness, student wellness, physical wellness, emotional wellness, mental wellness, and story walks are great for that because you get a physical activity. It's also an activity you can do with your family or friends to increase those bonds. So we didn't create these story walks, but we found them and found that they could be a good tool for making progress towards some of our results that we're working toward. Story walks can be permanent. They can be cemented into the ground, or they can be temporary. So you might use something like a realtor would use, or someone running a political campaign, you know, the wire signs that you can pick up and that you can move. And so we have done that before, but primarily the ones that we have used have been the permanent ones. So I am going to share a picture with you of one of the first ones that we did. And it was at Sand Gap Elementary School. In Jackson County, Kentucky. And that story walk went around a playground at the elementary school. It didn't really go around, it went down the hill and then back up the hill. So you can see from the placard here, a page of the story is on one side. It was blown up, so increased so that it would be easy to read. Everyone went down the hill and read part of the story and then turned around and came up the hill and read the other part of the story on the back side of that placard there. These folks are carrying yellow sheets of paper, which were scavenger hunts that they did on the opening of the trail. And the kids were so excited to be there. And when they turned in their scavenger hunt page, then they got a packet of learning materials to take home with them. So in that case, the school was our primary partner. In Clay County, in Manchester, we worked with the city to put up a story walk in the city park. We also partnered with the library there, which agreed to sort of be the keeper of the story walk and to change out the stories once in a while. We also worked with Save the Children in that community. So we were able to bring together a number of partners on that example. And this is another example where this storybook walk went up in a city park. This is in Barberville, Kentucky, in Thompson Park. So again, we worked with the city. The city was excited about this idea of having a storybook walk through the city park where people were already going. We also worked with a local business on this occasion. And they built this for us, and the city installed it. At that point, I was working on an innovative approaches to literacy grant, and our team of literacy navigators loved installing new stories. And every time they installed a new story, they would have an event. One of the great things about having this at a public park is that there was a pavilion with a shelter and a couple of tables. So the kids could gather around and do some arts and crafts, or they could do a physical activity that were somehow connected with the book that was in the storybook walk. So that was a great success there. And then I moved on to the full service community school grant in Berea. And I want to try to play for you a brief video that will show you the walk there and how it has been extra helpful during the pandemic. So can you all see that new screen? Give me a thumbs up. Okay.
Hi, I'm Jenny Hobson with the Full Service Community School Grant here in beautiful Berea, Kentucky. When everything shut down, we needed to think about how to connect with children and families. And we immediately thought of this beautiful story trail, one of the jewels of our community that you see here. We decided to provide kits to families with activities that they could do surrounding the story trail. So each month they get a kit that lets them come out and be part of a community of the story trail, even if we can't be together in person.
So you heard there Jenny talking about putting together kits. So she has been great. She's our elementary navigator for our full service grant at the elementary school. And she has been great about putting together kits that the families can come by the school and pick up that extend the learning from the learning trail, from the story trail into the home. Oftentimes she will put in another book. So if the book on the story trail is a fiction book, maybe it's a nonfiction book around the same topic. She will put in instructions for how to do an art or craft connected with it. And the families have really enjoyed that. And you could see, if you noticed, and I'll show you pictures again so you'll be able to see it, those placards were a little bit different from the other ones. And they're also different because they were the brainchild, the contents were of Heather Dent, who is an artist in Berea, and she applied for a grant to erect that story trail. So this time around, it wasn't the grant that I was working with or the Partners for Education was working with that installed the story trail. It was a local citizen who wanted to do it. She also has a son in elementary school, so I imagine that was also part of her motivation. So she works every month to create these pages that go into the story trail with the pages from the picture book of the month. So this month, the story is Lemonade in Winter. So imagine that the page from the book is up here. And down here, after you read the book, you have a prompt. What do you do on cold winter days like this? So that gives the child an opportunity for language development, for conversation with their family or friends, whoever it is that they're walking through the story trail with. Then on the next one, you have the next page of the story that you read. And then you see a prompt to do some physical activity. Skip to the next sign. Here's an activity to do when you go home. Look under your couch cushions to see what you can find. And you know that's going to tie in with whatever the story was up here. How many nickels would you need to equal $6? So now we're building onto the story with some math activity. So she creates one of those for every page of the book that is displayed on the story trail. And if there is space, she'll do some sort of extra post at the end. Some books have a few more pages and there's not always space. But you can see, follow us on Facebook. She is great for utilizing social media. We have tried something new this month for the first time, and that is this QR code down here at the bottom. If someone scans that into their phone, they can answer a couple of questions about the story trail. And so we can hopefully get some feedback from them. The Berea Story Trail has had a number of partners, especially around the opening when we had a big event with ribbon cutting and the mayor came. So obviously the city is a partner, the Parks and Recreation Department is a partner, the local library has been a partner, the health department came out when we had the opening event to make connections with families. The Early Childhood Council came out. So there have been multiple partners coming together and will continue to come together in the future, I hope, so that this trail can be sustained. Let me just take a minute to pull up this Facebook page so you can see a few more pictures. Heather also does this. I mean, we're a partner who does very little really, and she takes care of most of this. So you can see how these are a little bit different from the wooden ones. And she uses the Facebook page to announce when new stories are up, to sort of tease when new stories are coming. Here's a picture where she put some chalk dots on the ground for the kids to jump between for one of the physical activities. People will take pictures of their kids at the story trail and send them in to go on the Facebook page. Here's Heather. The book for October was Room on a Broom. And so she dressed as one of the characters and put herself on there to encourage kids to come. And just one more thing I wanted to show you, because she's an artist, she will, whenever there's an opportunity, encourage kids to do art. So the first book of the season was Swimmy, which obviously is about a fish. And so this was the art activity she encouraged kids to do at home. Use anything you have at your home and make a fish. And of course, they could then share their pictures on that Facebook page. So we've worked with a lot of partners. The partners are important for promotion, for sustainability, for getting the word out so that families will come. And so I'm going to stop so that I can turn it over to Kathy, who's going to talk about another kind of trail. If you all have questions, you can feel free to put those in the chat.
Hello, and thank you for attending our session this afternoon. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you and share some things that's going on in Cocke County, Tennessee. So Jay, if you'll pull up my slides. I do live in Cocke County. Cocke County, you can see on the map here, is in the eastern part of Tennessee. We are on the border between Tennessee and North Carolina. Interstate 40 passes through Cocke County. You may have been through our county on your way maybe to the beach in North Carolina or South Carolina. We also border Sevier County, and that is highly likely that you've heard of Sevier County and Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge and such, Dollywood, and also, of course, Sevier County, it houses the entrance to the Great Smoky Mountains, the most visited national park in the United States. So we're proud to live in Cocke County and share some things that's going on here. Our county is rural. It has a lot of high poverty, and therefore we have a lack of resources that provide highly engaging activities for families and children to have access to. We came about this Bourne Learning Trail project with thinking about where do children spend their time. We recognize that children spend about 20% of their time in a formal classroom and 80% of their time outside of that formal setting. So we were looking for alternative learning landscapes, places where children spend time. They need to be engaged in learning, fun activities, just kind of, including them into their time while they're in this setting so that they're learning without even recognizing they're learning while they're just having fun. So we'll go to the next slide, please, Jane. The Bourne Learning Trail is a United Way product. Let me back up first and talk about creating the landscapes. We were looking where children spend a lot of time. Some examples of these would be in a park, at the library, in a grocery store, at a laundromat. There's a lot of different locations and places that you can look to creating learning landscapes. We wanted to create the opportunity that would promote caregiver and child interaction and engagement, because we know that's how those brain cells are developed, through the interaction and the engagement between the adult and the child. We wanted them integrated into our community already and what the landscape looks like. Where are some opportunities that are there? We can just add a learning opportunity for children. And we, of course, wanted them to be fun and play-based. So the Bourne Learning Trail was brought to our attention by a leadership table that we have in place around the Rural Accelerator Initiative. This initiative was launched in May of 2019 by Save the Children in Cott County, and I serve as senior specialist for this project, the initiative. The leadership table provides strategies and oversight for us, and one of them suggested that we look into the Bourne Learning Trail. As I was saying, Bourne Learning Trail is a United Way product. It is 10 placards, highly engaging activities that children do while moving from one plaque to another. And comparing to what Beth has talked about with a book walk, of course, in the book walk, you move from one station to the next as they're reading the book. In the Bourne Learning Trail, there's 10 placards, but they would not have to be in any chronological order. And you wouldn't have to do them all at the same time. If families have, don't have enough time to go through all 10, which depending on how long they stayed at each session and engaged with the child, it might take an hour or more. But they could do 2 or 3 at a time. They can skip around. They can, move between them. And so there's no real order to them. One doesn't build on the next. And you can spend as much time as you would like at each session, and you can leave and come back at a later time. The Bourne Learning Trail supports early childhood learning, and it's fun. There's physical learning activity in it, where there's, as like Beth was talking about, they had added to their book walk, jumping and hopping and skipping and such is there. There's singing, there's storytelling, there's some on shapes and the alphabet and such. So there's a variety of different things, but they all support literacy, listening skills, speaking skills, and highly engaging activity between the adult and the child. Creative, engaging opportunities. They promote health and wellness in that they're outside, in an outside environment, and also there's physical activity along the trail. When we were looking at spaces to locate our Bourne Learning Trail, we identified 2 locations. We wanted high traffic areas where they can serve a lot of children and families, and also we wanted spaces that we could get these installed pretty quickly, because we started thinking about them before COVID locked down everything, but once it did, we really needed some outdoor spacing that families would have access to engaging activities. So 2 areas that we identified was a rural medical, which is a local clinic. They already had a walking trail at their facility, and our Newport City Park. The city park is a hub in the city area that a lot of children and families come to. There's a baseball field, football field, a pool for the summer. There's a pavilion where people come and have picnics and birthday parties and such. And there's a playground area. So those are the 2 areas we landed on. So we'll go to the next slide, Jay. When we started our collaboration with these 2 organizations, Rural Medical, we contacted them, shared with them what a Bourne Learning Trail was. We talked about installing one at the Rural Medical Cosby station, at the Cosby facility. And they were in agreement and approved. And so they had a person on staff that could literally install the Bourne Learning Trail. They wanted to resurface their asphalt before we did it, so it would be nice and ready to put, because there are some paintings, as you can see in the lower picture here, of the hopscotch board it's actually painted onto the pavement. And there's 4 or 5 of the stations that require this. So they wanted to resurface their asphalt first before we did. They got that finished. And then their person on staff actually installed these. You can see these signs were put on metal posts. The sign itself comes with the holes already in place on the sign and the hardware to attach them to a post. They can be put to a metal post, or they could be put to like a wooden post, a 4x4 pressure treated or whatever. Another thing Beth talked about with the book walk, even if the wooden container of the book is permanent, you still interchange the pages out, and you still interchange the book that they're reading from time to time. These Bourne Learning Trail, the placards will stay up for we think a minimum of 2 to 3 years. They're high quality metal signs. And so that's the lifespan, we think, of at least of 3 years. So it's not anything once we get them up. The sustainability of a Bourne Learning Trail primarily comes from the painting on the asphalt. Now that will fade and it needs to be repainted, maybe each year, just to keep it bright and attractive for people to come. So the rural medical was a pretty quick, installation. We bought the kit from United Way. Their staff person put it in place, painted it on, and we're good to go. They already had a bench that you see here in this picture, so we wanted to add an extended learning opportunity, so we added a little library, a free little library there, and you can see it in that picture. In this time of COVID, we would have normally put in multiple titles of books, so families could have had, or children could have had the opportunity to select a book they were interested in. But during COVID, we opted to put a single title. So we've got multiple copies of one title of one book in there. We put them in plastic sleeves and we put a note in asking the families to select only the top book in the plastic sleeve and of course take it home with them. So that was one of the safety precautions we took during the time of COVID. We then looked to Newport City Park. They already had a walking trail also. The mayor sits on the leadership table. So he was, he thought it was a good idea to put one at the city park. He asked me to come to the city council, which I did. They approved the installation of a Bourne Learning Trail at our city park. But the collaboration came there then with the director of the city parks, or the Parks and Recreation. And when I went to talking to the director of Parks and Recreation, he has the vision, the overall vision for the park. He's worked in that job for several years, and they've done such a good job with really building up our Newport City Park. And so he said to me, which I hadn't thought about, but that's not near the playground. The families for the small children, they come to the playground area, and they may or may not go over to the walking trail because it sort of is on the outside or on the outskirts of the park per se. And that made perfect sense. So then as a team, we went back to really identifying where this Bourne Learning Trail needs to be located so it would be easily accessible by the families, where the traffic is, where they would definitely use it. And so it was identified it would be within the park, within the playground area. There was some concrete walkways already installed and in place there between parts, because the playground area is kind of divided up into different areas. But we needed some more. And that was a vision of the Newport City Park anyway, and the director of the Parks and Recreation, to tie all of these playground areas together with concrete walkway. That was a vision of his, but they didn't have funding for it right now. So we was able in this partnership and in this collaboration to work with a couple of local partners, concrete guys. They volunteered some time to pour and finish the concrete. Newport Paving provided the concrete. We did have to pay for it, but it was a much reduced rate than what it would have normally cost us. So there become two more partners that we didn't anticipate we would need, but we wound up collaborating with on this. We poured 160 extra feet of concrete walkway within the city park, and then the placards were put up. They are not in a straight line by any means. There are, 2 or 3 along each part of the segment of the walkway and between each of the playground areas. So that still lends itself to the families. If they don't want to go straight through all 10 at one time, they can move to different ones. Now, how does the libraries form and play the part in this work, and how we're partnering with them? We were asked the libraries to help us publicize. As Beth said, it's very important, whenever you put any kind of walking trail out there or any kind of community event or whatever, to get the publicity is huge, to get the word out, get the communication out. So we'll ask the libraries to pass out flyers. At Rural Medical, we have done a flyer, a guide. I'll call it a guide. We have it in English and Spanish. And I will say the placards themselves from United Way come in both languages. We only bought the English, and we did a flyer in Spanish that helped with that. And so that being said, the libraries will help pass out flyers and help us communicate about it. We foresee in the future of them possibly suggesting book titles that could go in our little library. And especially if they're doing something in the libraries during the month or something that we could add then some similar books to our little libraries. So Jay, we'll go on to the next slide, please. To be sure I'm looking at my time. So what is our expanded impact of this project with our 2 Bourne learning trails that we have already in place? We're wanting to look at additional Bourne learning trail sites. If you go to the United Way website and you start looking at Bourne learning trails, one of the first locations they suggest is a library. So if you have space outside your library, that's an ideal place to put a Bourne learning trail. Our library does not have that space. It has very small amount of parking, and there's no place to put a walking trail around our city library. We have 3 libraries that are out in the county. They have a little bit more space, so that's something we can explore. But we are looking at additional sites for Bourne learning trails. What are some additional, how can we add additional learning opportunities at these Bourne learning sites, both the ones we have established and our new ones? Like Beth said, I think a scavenger hunt would be a fantastic thing to do. We have some programs in our county from Save the Children that work with small children, like Birth to 2. It's called Early Steps to School Success. And we have the Kindergarten Readiness Ambassador who works with child and family playgroups. We'll ask them to encourage their families to go and maybe even do a family activity around the Bourne learning trails just to get people started. We already have some high traffic, we're already noticing a lot of people using the Bourne learning trails, but these are just additional ways that we can add learning opportunities at those sites. Circling back around to what Beth was talking about with the book walk, I will share in Cott County, we have 2 projects that are underway. The first one, Unify Cott County, which is a community engagement collaborative in our county, is looking to do a downtown book walk and incorporate the businesses that are located downtown with either probably putting the books, the pages from the book in the businesses, like in the window or on the outside wall of the building. Also, we do have as a Cosby Campground, which is an entrance to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in our county. And in that, the UT Extension Agency, which is in our county, applied for a grant from the U.S. Park Service. So if you have parks, state or national parks in your area, you might want to look into this. But there was an opportunity to write a grant around book walks through the U.S. Park Service. The UT Extension wrote that and received the funding, and they're already in the plans of doing this. It will be installed by spring. April, I think, is the planned date for the kickoff for it and the grand opening. But the Cosby Campground gets a lot of people coming, both from our community, but all across the country, come there for camping, hiking, has a lot of hiking trails. And so we know a lot of people will use and enjoy and benefit from that book walk in the park whenever that gets installed. So that's what's going on in Cott County. I appreciate you listening and your attention, and anything you could share, either questions or comments that you want to share along this line in the chat box, we would appreciate them.